Good evening, Chief. Angela,
Good
Aviva.
evening, Councilman. How are you?
How you doing?
Doing well, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Binghamton City Council work session for Monday, December 6th, 2021. Let's stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the
to the
flag
flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic
For which it
for which it
stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, liberty,
liberty,
justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilman Scaringi,
Present.
Councilwoman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Present.
Councilman Burns,
Present.
Councilman Strawn,
Present.
Councilman Scanlon,
Present.
and President Resnetti.
Present.
That's all 7 here.
Thank you. All right, so let's get going. Up first, we have Chief Gardner. How are you?
Good. Sophia, how are you?
Doing well. Okay, so tell us about RL 21-264. You have two, actually. You also have 275.
Yes, this first one, 264, is to increase personnel services, the program assistant. Sandy, our program assistant, has retired or is retiring after 35 years. We hired a new program assistant who's starting next Monday. So Sandy is going to stay on through December to train her 2 or 3 days a week. And so that's the reason for the increase in the program assistant line. And also the second part is gasoline fuel line, which apparently there's been quite a raise in the cost of fuel. So the fund is now depleted. So we're going to increase that $8,000.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay,
Thank you, Chief.
thank you.
Okay, and the second part is a resolution to amend the 2021 fire budget, and our current overtime budget has been depleted. So we are taking funds, reserves that we have in various lines in the contingency fund. And we are adding 5,500 to the out of title line and 115,000 to the overtime line. So these will be coming out of personal wages of firefighter, AL leave time, ambulance pay, temporary services, gas and heat, electricity, and out of the contingency fund.
Councilwoman Friedman, I think you had your hand up first.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Hi, Chief, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. Could you please explain why there is so much money that's required in the overtime line?
It's apparently every year there's a shortfall. My first year dealing with this, but overtime is generated by a number of causes, such as military leave time, sick time, the Family Leave Act, vacation time, accumulated leave time, personnel time. Firefighters are sometimes gone off-site training in Monterey Falls at the State Fire Academy. And, we EMS and paramedic training that has to be backfilled.
Okay, so do you, is this a typical amount that would need to be transferred? Would you say $115,000?
Yeah,
Is this kind of on par with what is normally required?
I'm sure it varies from year to year, but the comptroller, based on past years, this is an estimate on his part. It might be, it's possible maybe a little too much money, but we can always give it back. But that was his estimate based on past years, the comptroller.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Riley?
Thank you, Council President. Hello, Mr. Gardner. How are you?
Oh, how are you?
Good,
Nice to see you.
good. So I know we have hired a number of new recruits to manage the shortfall that was discussed under the previous chief. Has that put us, in terms of the fire station's need, in terms of the overall department's needs, have we met our need to cover those that are on long-term?
Yes, it's, after the firefighters were actually put online, the overtime did slow down. It has fulfilled a need. I mean, currently right now, I believe we're short. We have 4 positions that are funded that are due to be filled in April. We've had 1 firefighter leave permanently on disability. So, right now we're short about 5-6 positions.
Okay, but there is a plan in place again for April. So this will cover us in the meantime.
Yes,
For the firefighters that are working overtime to meet the needs of the city.
absolutely. It'll cover us until the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, one more question, I'm sorry. The hiring will begin in April, but they will not be onboarded and ready to fly independently until how long after?
Oh, probably about 6 weeks.
Okay, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming down. Yep. All right, moving on to Chief Zukoski. You're on.
How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm
Good.
sorry I don't have the RLs in front of me with the numbers. I was out of town and Chuck had emailed them to me.
Okay, so this is RL 21-277, amended 2021 on a street parking budget.
And what's that for is that one of a longtime employee retired. I don't know, it was maybe June or July, and we had to pay him out, and so then we hired somebody in his place, and so this is putting back the money to pay the person that took his place through the end of the year.
Someone have any questions? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Do I have another one? I believe.
No, does he? Am I missing something, Lee?
Could it possibly be under Ken's name? Chuck, this got typed up in controller's office, and I see on the copy I have here had Ken's name on it. All right.
Yeah, if you look towards the end of the agenda, there are 2 things with my name. I think it was just a copy and paste, and it should be the chief.
RL 21-274 and 278.
Should be page 62B.
274 would be the chief.
Okay, Chief, go ahead.
That was another longtime employee. My administrative assistant worked in records, retired, and we had to bring her back in, similar to what the fire chief just spoke about, to certain reports we're due at certain parts of the year to DCJS. So we had to bring her in to train the new employee to how to do that, the various reports to the state that are due at certain parts of the year. So we had to make up that in the temporary services line, make up that money that we paid her.
Any questions? Okay. So the next one would be 278. Nope, it's not. Okay, you're good.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. So let's move on to RL 21-273, Mr. Lake. Oh,
How you
you're
doing,
not.
Council?
Hi, how are you?
Great.
You're not
Unfortunately,
Mr. Lake.
Ron can be here tonight, so I'm here for him.
Can you
We're
just
asking,
speak up just a little bit, get a little
sure,
closer?
we're asking to amend that engineering, the engineering budget for the overtime. And I believe there are 3 budget lines we would like to amend. And most of that money, right around $7,000 right now, is going to be billed to the contractor for overtime.
Any questions? Councilwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Madam President. So I don't know I can't see who's speaking.
It's me, it's Frank Owen City.
Oh, hi. So I can't,
Hi, how are you doing?
I can't see you. I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay, so you said that the $7,000 of the $13,000 in overtime is being billed to the contractor, you said?
Yes, currently, and there are, I believe, another 2 contracts that we have to submit invoices to the contractors for overtime. So most of the money will be repaid to the city.
Most of the $13,000 will be repaid to the city?
Yes.
Okay. I think that, well, okay. And then my other question is, so 7,000 is being billed to the contractor, then the remaining, where does the remaining 6,000 come from?
Of the two contracts that got invoiced, 2 contractors will be paying roughly around 7,000 each.
I see.
And there's
Okay.
another 2 contracts that still have to be invoiced.
And that will be an additional RL
Yes.
in addition to
Nope,
this 13?
that should cover it all.
That's included. Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, no set. Thank you. Let's move on to RL 21-263. Is Brian on there?
Brian, it says you're muted if you're going to present.
Hi, it's me.
Hi, Sharon.
Brian is at ZBA tonight. Lee, can you just read the title out loud?
Amend the 2021 law budget.
Ken, you're muted, love.
Increase. Do you want me to
The
read that?
reason Brian was doing this is because it actually is specifically to my line. When I actually officially retired at the end of March, I could work part-time through the end of the year. That was based on a certain number of hours. I exceeded those hours sometime in November because I've been working more than was anticipated. So between the final payout and the additional hours for, I think, the second half of November and through December, that's why they're making this amendment.
Yeah, so on behalf of the law department, we beseech council to please assist Brian and the department until I can come back in January in order to essentially pay Ken on a part-time basis. He just finished a major name clearing hearing last week, so his work is still necessary and we still need him.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Next one, RL 21271, amend 2021 parks budget. Is Pat on there? I don't see him on his end.
Chuck, did you?
I'll handle it.
All right, go ahead, Chuck.
This is to cover the pool overtime, or not, the temp labor in the pools over the summer that were short, along with some other temporary labor over the fall time period. We're taking money out of his senior center temp labor account at 10 grand and 10,000 out of his park electricity budget for a total of 17,529.72.
Any questions? Councilwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Chuck, how are you?
Good.
Okay, I have a general question. I noticed that in this packet, there's a lot of legislation dealing with overtime. Is that just because this is at the end of the year? So it's kind of like the pay lines are sort of being cleaned up?
Yes.
Okay, and we would normally expect that to happen at the end of the year?
We'd hope it wouldn't, but in this case, there is a lot of different line items that are like that. In this case, this isn't overtime, this is temp labor. But if overtime was going to be over, it's going to be in the last month of the year usually.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, but there's like 4 or 5 pieces of legislation having to do with increasing the overtime. So I was just.
You're correct. You're correct.
You're right. This one is not one of them. But thank you for answering my question.
Any other questions for Chuck? Councilman O'Reilly?
Thank you, Council President. Hi, Chuck. How are you?
Good.
Good. Based upon what we discussed last week in the training, just for our general purposes, if we were to leave money unspent in certain lines, it would roll over. And just clarify for me, would it roll over to our general fund if it is unused?
It will roll into the fund balance if it's unused and unappropriated or unencumbered.
Absolutely. And then if we had a fund balance policy, we can then outline things and appropriate or talk about percentages of how the rolled over funds may be used, for example.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that webinar with us. It was quite beneficial.
Thanks for listening to it.
Anyone else? Councilman Burns?
Chuck, just about that webinar. Thank you, Madam President. About that webinar, is that on tape? Can we see that?
It probably is on tape, Councilman Burns. I'll see if I can find it for you.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Actually, a lot of things that OSC does, they put on tape out there, and I'll find the website that you can go to and choose what you want to look at.
That would be great. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you, Chuck. We're moving on to RL 272. Dan there? Is he on?
Yes, how you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good, doing good.
All right.
I'm looking to amend the budget to help cover some underestimated budget lines and some other ones that we overestimated. I think a lot of it, I wasn't here when they did this budget, but I think a lot of it had to do with COVID, because I know for a fact the last 2 years that I worked in combined shops, we had no overtime. So I think they under budgeted the overtime, not knowing that we were going to have all these events back for electricity and signs and so forth.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Dan? Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Steve Carson, are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, how are you?
Okay, great. I'm actually in the middle of a CDAC meeting, so this is very confusing. Okay, so I've got several RLs here.
Yep.
The first one is RL 21-265. I do apologize because this one probably seems a little confusing in that City Council technically already approved these monies, The issue comes down to HUD told us in July that we didn't give enough public hearing time for the final budget before approval. So we have fixed it this time. We were waiting for them to approve our 47 plan to begin with, which is technically what CDAC recommended. So now we've had the public hearing. We're having a second public hearing, I think Wednesday. And then that will suffice to meet the 30-day. It's actually 40-day requirement that we're doing 40 days. And then City Council can then essentially reapprove this budget. I haven't heard any issues with people saying to change the numbers, but that's always, you're right. I mean, between the mayor and City Council to come to a funding, what am I trying to say here? What you both agree on. So, but this is exactly the same as the summer bill that was approved, or the summer budget that was approved. So that's the point of this. It doesn't need it. Well, it cannot be expedited. This can only be approved the business meeting after the business meeting with the second public hearing, which, like I said, is Wednesday. So the goal was to have this done on the 22nd meeting, if possible. Does anyone have any questions about this, Earl?
Steve, you were breaking up just a little bit. Were you asking for this to be expedited? I missed the very last sentence.
No, I'm not actually.
Okay.
I'm actually asking for a normal course because we need that public hearing on Wednesday to be included as part of the approval process.
Thank you. Councilwoman Friedman, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Hi, Steve, how are you?
I'm doing all right. What can I do for you?
Okay, so I know I had, sorry, I'm trying to organize my thoughts. Okay, so my question is logistically, so I understand I had sent you an email in which you helpfully explained kind of what was going on here. And so since City Council has technically approved this already, we're sort of, my understanding is that we're in a way like reopening it sort of for public consideration. So then after, does that then annul the vote that we already had before these public hearings? And if so, or if not, we would then be voting, the vote in the second December business meeting would then be instead of, like, it would override the vote that we have already done?
That would be for legal to answer that. I couldn't answer that because that's a city requirement. That's depends on how the city handles the City Council stuff.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I think I phrased that question in a confusing way, so I apologize. So I guess Corp Counsel, would you be able to answer that question? If we need to sort of reopen this legislation for consideration after the public hearing, and then we vote on it again, whatever that vote is would override what we had previously voted?
Well, you'd be reapproving if you ended up making amendments to it. So Steve, what happens if you have the meeting, it's amended, that's no longer the final? Do you have to do another 30 days?
Per my understanding with HUD, depending on how much major changes would be, yes, entirely possible you would need another 30 days.
Yeah. So the answer is it kind of depends on what you're doing. You could be reapproving it, or you could be doing brand new legislation.
I see. Okay. And what is the absolute deadline that this must be approved by?
I don't know if there's a deadline per se. Right now, the officially accepted annual action plan is the FY47 CDAC budget recommendation. That is what has been submitted to HUD. So we really cannot set up budget lines, we can't fund programs until that disconnect between what the mayor and city council want to spend funds on and what CDAC wants to spend funds on is reconciled. So, I mean, understand the contract year is going to start January 1st. This is going to be a shorter contract year that's going to end in August. So there's a bit of a shortness in general, but I believe this would be the same as any other year. It really depends on how quickly we want to get this stuff going. So I can't give you there's no legal or HUD cutoff. This is essentially being treated from HUD's perspective as an amendment to the action plan. So it's a modification to the existing action plan, which is how we've worked it out with HUD.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. And so if we were to make amendments to it, that would be, this is also maybe a Corp Council question. If we were to make amendments to it, that would be done at the December 8th business meeting, the same day as the public hearing, or that would have to be done at the following meeting?
No, it's always first read legislation at the public hearing, so it could be either.
Could be either. Okay. All right, great. Thank you for explaining that.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we're moving on to the next one, Steve.
Okay, the next one is RL 21-266 to amend RL 21-41. I have to just figure out which is which. So the issue here is that there was a disconnect in communication with one of the agencies, and they moved ahead on a project before the project was ready to be moved ahead on. We would still like to keep funding that agency, so we found something that could be done with the same capital improvements. Originally, for greater opportunities, it was going to be the siding on their building, but we've decided to instead do the carpeting inside the building. So it's no change in funding amounts or sources, it's just a change in scope.
Any questions? Okay, move on to 267.
Okay, which one is this? Okay, so this is amending R 2155. In a similar vein, is this the one? 150, oh, wait. Got so many RLs. This is a very similar situation. The agency moved ahead on funding. This was from COVID funding. This was for an bed expansion originally, but because they moved ahead before we got all the paperwork in line, they decided that they would rather use these funds on a laundry upgrade that's needed due to the bed expansion. So once again, same funding amount, same funding source, just a change in scope.
Councilwoman Riley.
Yes. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing all right. What can I do for you?
Yeah. So what's happening that there are these gaps and issues with the project starting and funding not being approved? Is there some communication issues? What's happening?
Honestly, I think that we've had so much money come down the pike that it's becoming, it's almost like the money's, so many projects are getting set up and so many agencies are trying to jump ahead on them. After one of these agencies told me they had already started work before the project got done, I sent a memo out to every agency that's got capital improvements or is going to get capital improvements or has applied for capital improvements, stating the law that, you cannot move on these until we give a go ahead. The other reason is a lot of these agencies haven't done capital projects with the city before with CDBG funds. So they're not used to the processes. So with that email, I tried to clarify to everybody and explain in no uncertain terms what is and is not allowed at certain stages of the approval process. So hopefully these are just the kinks that we have to work out. The city's has only been doing capital projects with agencies for the last couple of years, so there is bound to be some problems. But this is what it is, and you have to fix it moving ahead.
Okay, so it's not an issue in terms of manpower and too lengthy of a gap in terms of processing issues.
Oh, I could always use more people. If you guys would be willing to fund me about 5 or 10 more guys in my office, that would help a lot. But But no, it's not a manpower per se issue. Well, let me explain the other issue going on here is that HUD, we had an environmental audit and we had an on-site monitoring visit this year where they pointed out some large flaws in process regarding CDBG. And so some of these processes are actually new for us. The environmental review process has become quite more burdensome than it was before. And it's just, there's a delay time when you have to communicate with, say, EPA and State Historical Preservation Office and Fish and Wildlife Service. We have managed to iron out a lot of those issues too. A lot of those wrinkles are gone, but still it's a problem going forward. It just means we need to start the ERR process even sooner. But unfortunately, some agencies, as soon as they hear they have funding, there's an instinct to jump ahead with that. And I've had to basically pull the reins back on certain agencies, saying, slow down. We have to, SHPO has to get approval. We have to see if you're in a floodplain. So all these things have become slightly more onerous than normal.
Okay. Now, one last question. There was a gentleman in the office assisting, and I forgot what his title was, to help with the housing and the COVID-related finances.
Jeff.
Okay. Is that position still in existence?
Yes. Jeff's handling housing. He handles our mortgages and our income verification processes for our first-time home buyer and home improvement program. And he helps with discharge of mortgages. He does all that.
But he's no longer doing the rental assistance that was under not ARPA, but under the COVID funds. And that part that's under your umbrella.
Basically, what we did with that was we subcontracted that out. We made him a subrecipient for it, but Family Enrichment Network was already getting funds for doing almost the exact same thing with a different grant that we're funding them with. So he said, well, you can't spend that money yet. Could you spend this money? And so we swapped over and gave them the rental assistance CDBG funds to utilize.
Okay.
But Jeff still does handle the more people that are homeowners and call in with mortgage assistance. So that program's still going.
Right.
And
But that was a different chunk of money though. Remember, we paid
CDBG as opposed to, well, they're both the rental assistance under CDBG and the mortgage assistance under CDBG are still CDBG COVID. They're still the same grant source.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying, Steve. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to 21-268.
Okay, so speaking of money coming down, almost too much money coming down from Washington. This is a grant of about $1.9 million from the federal, from HUD. It's essentially the same as the CDBG and ESG COVID funds, but this is for our home grant. Couple big differences. This one is not in a rush to get it out the door as quickly as possible, like the COVID funds were. This one requires a lot more public feedback, a lot more consultation with stakeholders and residents. So what this is an RL to accept that grant for the 1.9 million. They've already released or allowed for release about $96,000 that can be used for administrative funds. So what I would like to do is accept this grant, provide a grant line that accounting will come up with for the admin aspect of it, and then utilize those funds for a housing market study, which is a requirement of this grant, which is one of the reasons they are allowing us to get admin funds in advance. So that's the point of this, is to go ahead and get this in the basically in the hopper and get it moving along. Because I know somebody's going to ask, the home APR funds have to be used to target individuals that are homeless or at risk of homeless through home-based activities. Now, home-based activities can include rental rehabs. It can include some homeowner rehabs, but that's going to be more difficult to do with homeless or near homeless. It can be used for rental assistance through a Section 8-like program called Tenant-Based Rental Assistance, or TBRA. So basically what it is, it's a housing grant to be targeted towards those who are homeless or near homeless.
Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. What was my question? Oh, okay. So, Steve, you said that this grant requires more, did you say community input or community interaction? I forgot the phrase that you used.
It's community input, but that can involve community interaction. We need to have, I think, 1 or 2 public meetings with ample time for people to provide feedback. We need to reach out to stakeholders. We have to have the housing market study. I'm working with the continuum of care on their ends of things for almost like a homeless needs study. What we're really trying to do is figure out exactly how home-based project could we do that would affect the homeless that need it the most, or the near homeless who need it the most.
Right. Okay. And so you wouldn't at this time necessarily know the specifics of how stakeholders might be defined or how outreach would be done. Would you know that?
It's pretty much all housing-based stakeholders. So there's a list provided with it. It includes the housing authority, the continuum of care and any agencies that deal with homeless. It involves groups like the SEP group or Metro Interfaith, or any group that assists with housing of any groups or individuals. So honestly, I'm not going to be too picky when it comes to trying to reach out. I have my listserv for community interest, so I will let everyone there know. I'm trying to think what else we would do. I could ask the mayor's office to do another press release, or even put something on Facebook or Twitter. But yeah, I don't know. Was there a particular agency you wanted us to reach out to? We'd be happy to.
I don't know if I had anybody in mind, but I just, I appreciate the fact that there's, certain requirements about making sure that the voices of stakeholders in the community, and presumably people who would be directly affected by this money, are required for the grant. So I was just curious if you had any specifics about that, but
I haven't really formulated it yet. More than likely, I'm starting with the COC. I want to get the housing market study, and then I'll probably try to maybe have some meetings at the BHA, maybe communicate with any of the agencies that provide housing or supportive housing, which are a lot of your COC members, as well as Metro Interfaith. I'll probably end up contacting DSS as well. Basically, anyone who deals with housing in the area should be involved with this, or at least we should get some feedback from them.
Right. Okay. And also presumably individuals who may be affected by the, individuals who are experiencing homelessness or close to that as well. I would think in addition.
Yeah. That's where it gets more difficult. We're working. I'm trying to work on some information for the code enforcement when they go to a rental unit, to provide to those homeowners or those renters as a sort of a means of outreach. Homeless individuals themselves are more difficult to reach out per se, but obviously anyone in the COC is going to have hopefully the ears of their clientele there. I'm trying to think what else we would do. If we can do ads in the paper. I mean, these are the things that we ran into with trying to get the rental assistance program and the mortgage assistance program out there anyway. The United Way was doing marketing for that. I hadn't thought of doing a marketing thing for it, but there may be some funds in that admin, by putting money in the admin line, that would allow us to do some sort of more, maybe a $5,000 outreach program of some kind, even done through the United Way. I don't know yet, but yeah, we could definitely do like a more aggressive outreach.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate all of those ideas. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Stevenson, we have you on the phone. Why don't you tell us a little bit about RL 282?
282. Did I have an RL 282 going down? Or is
Steve,
that, I don't,
it's for, it's to enter into an agreement with the Broome County Council of Churches for the child program.
I didn't see that on the agenda. I do apologize. Yeah, so that was originally money that was going to go towards the First Ward Action Councils. They were doing a housing project, something similar to what I had spoken of before. There was well, this one wasn't that they moved ahead too quickly, that it was the timeline for them meeting several grant requirements allowed them to not be able to use that funding. So we communicated with Broome County Council of Churches, their child program. They indicated that due to COVID, they have had a much decrease, a decrease in the amount of donations. And honestly, even the 80,000 will probably be a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things. But we'll redirect those monies to Council of Churches to expand their food pantry programs, or to buy food for the food pantries.
Any questions? Okay, I think you're all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Good.
And up we have John Scuderi. Hi, how are you?
Hello, Councilwoman. Good evening, councilpersons. I'm asking here tonight for an increase in our professional service line, expense line of $10,000, as well as an increase in our parking ticket revenue line of $10,000. We have a slightly more expense this year as our third-party vendor for ticket collections charges us based upon revenue. And fortunately, we've experienced also an increase in revenue in our parking ticket collections. So it's an offset. I am asking to have this expedited, as I do have an aged outstanding invoice that I'd like to get paid with the third-party vendor.
Any questions for John? Councilwoman Friedman?
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, John, how are you?
Hi, Aviva, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Okay, I just was a little bit confused about the wording of this, because so the there's an increase, you said there was an increase in the revenue line, correct?
Right, we're increasing the revenue line by 10,000 and the expense line by 10,000. Both
see.
lines, both lines.
Okay, and then I just was confused by the next sentence, because it says parking fines collected is greater than budgeted, thus the expenses need to increase. But I just am confused, because then wouldn't the revenue increase, not the expenses?
Councilwoman, it has to balance. So if you're going to increase revenues, you need to increase an expense line somewhere.
I see. Okay, I guess I was confused because I didn't see the direct connection.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Chuck could
I
give
mean,
a.
it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Obviously, the 10,000 coming out of revenue and expenses. I thought that the.
Right, Aviva, as I mentioned, our third-party collection agency, the expense portion of it, they charge us based upon a percentage of revenue collected. So if our revenue goes up, our expense is going to go up as well. So that's why both lines have to agree.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
Anyone else? Thank you, John. Have a good night.
Thank you, councilpersons.
So up next, we have RL 21-261. And is Megan up here? I don't see it.
Yes, I am, Madam President. I'm filling in for Jared tonight.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. So this is an RL, it's to authorize a grant application from the Binghamton Housing Authority to the New York State Office of Community Renewals CDBG COVID response program. So this funding would be used by the Housing Authority to replace outdated elevators in North Shore Tower 2 downtown. In order to receive this funding, the state requires that housing authorities get approval from their host city. So that's why we're coming to you tonight with this RL. It's at the request of the Housing Authority. As part of this, the city would have to set a public hearing on Wednesday. And if the funding is approved, the Housing Authority would fully administer the grant. All the work going forward would be on them. It's their project.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
All right, so up we have RL 21-280, and that's Tito Martinez. Are you there?
I am here, yes.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. What we're requesting is to have the Stadium District Master Plan be on the agenda to be voted on at the December 22nd meeting. The plan, there was a pleasant presentation, as you all might remember, at the last work session. They took the feedback that they had gotten up until this point, and they've completed the first draft. And that's available on the city's website. If you go to the homepage and scroll down to the spotlight section, you'll see the Stadium District Master Plan over on the right side. That's available for the members of council to view, for the public to view. And Whittam will be refining the plan between now and the 22nd. What we're requesting is that it be on the agenda for a vote at that meeting.
Does anyone have any questions for Tito? Okay, thank you.
Oh, I do.
Oh, sorry, Councilwoman
Sorry.
Riley, go ahead.
Thank you. So if they are refining, is there a deadline by which comments from the community and/or council need to be received in order for those questions, concerns to be implemented into the final plan that will be then shared with council prior to the meeting for the vote?
So what we put on that, we put a little blurb on the website where that the plan is viewable. We ask that comments be in by the 17th at the latest. That way, Whittam would have the first 2 days of the following week to make any possible changes. Obviously, the sooner the better. You know, if they could be in by this Friday, that gives them plenty of time to respond, ask questions, and then make changes. But I would say the 17th is probably the drop deadline.
Thank you for that, Tito.
You're welcome, Councilman.
Okay, thank you, Tito. Have a good night.
You too, thank you.
Up we have RL 21-270. Looks like it's you.
All right. So Social on State would like to conduct a fireworks display on New Year's Eve. They did not do one in 2020, but they did one, I believe, in 2017, 18, and 19. And I believe they're doing it from the Metro Center parking lot.
Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding that or any comments?
Yeah, they do a great job with that. I've been to it. It's wonderful.
They do. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, Chuck, you're up next. We have RL 21-262. Tell us about that.
262 is an RL allowing the mayor to enter into a supplemental agreement with Keystone Associates for the fire station. Their original cost was based off of the total cost of the project. That cost is higher than originally anticipated. So we need to increase the contract with them by, I think it's 194,000.
Any questions on that one? Right. Thank you. Let's move on to 281.
Let me just pull this one up, Sophia.
281, modify the fire station bond ordinance.
Okay, what goes along with the last piece of legislation is, as well as some other items that we became aware of, is we need to increase the overall cost of this project from 9.5 million to $10 million, $10 million even. I don't believe it's gonna hit 10 million. One of the issues that we had is in the original estimated cost that I submitted on the bond ordinance did not include furnishings for inside the building, which was roughly $250,000, which is going to be paid out of a different source outside of bonding. But since that's the overall, that's part of the overall cost of the project, that needs to be in the bond ordinance, even though we're not going to borrow the money.
Any questions? Okay, next one is 276.
I'm just scrolling through here. Let me get
Amend the 2021 comptroller budget.
Okay, this is a budget for my department. I've had multiple new people in my office this year, and I was lucky enough to talk a retired employee to come back. And I need to keep her at least through the end of the year. And I'm asking to raise it to raising it 7,500. I'm taking money from my own department, travel and training, as well as auditing and finance services.
Any questions for Chuck? Okay, Chuck, what about RL 21-279?
279 is really Ken and myself. Back in 2009, City Council changed the eligibility of people to get lifetime health insurance from 10 years to 20 years. I'm not sure if it was at that point or legislation thereafter. It does not clearly identify that across the board for everybody. So this piece of legislation basically identifies exactly what we've done since 2009 in my office, and making sure that anybody that retires needs 20 years of service if they were hired after January 1st, 2009, 10 years if they were hired prior to January 1st, 2009, and that if they do not retire from the city of Binghamton into the retirement system, then they're not eligible for health insurance. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. If a fire person was a member of the Binghamton Fire Department for 30 years and we paid retirement rates for them based off of that, which might be 35% a year, that's the current rate, then they go get a job someplace else in an ERS system, and they better their retirement system. So someone like with 30 years experience in the fire department will leave with 50% of their average, where if they're in the ERS after 30 years, they'll get 60% for the rest of their life. New York State has always told me that the way to stop it, that they won't stop it, is just don't make them make the choice. Do they want health insurance for life, or do they want the higher retirement number? And that's what we've always done. This is just clarifying exactly what we do here. Ken, you want to add anything?
No, I was just going to say that we're really just codifying what we've been doing for the last 15, 20 years.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Chuck, since we have you here on the phone, tell us about RL 284, which is not an agenda, but circulated earlier today.
Which one's 284? I got them all here. 284 is a resolution allowing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Excelis to administer the city's vision plan. If you're on our health insurance plan and you're an active employee, you also get a little bit of dental insurance, a little bit of vision insurance. The vision used to be administered by a company called Lifetime. They backed out of it, and I've had a hard time finding someone that will pick this up for us. And I ultimately got Excelis to do it and agree to it. Last Friday, they sent me in a contract, and I'm requesting that everything should be the same administrative cost is what they told me. I haven't actually compared it, to be honest with you, but I trust what they say. And that's basically allowing us to enter into a contract with Excelis for that.
Any questions or comments? Councilwoman Riley?
It's not pertaining, I'm sorry, to this one. I'd like to go back, if no one has questions about this particular RL, I'd like to go back to clarify RL 21-281.
Are there any questions that pertain to this particular RL that Chuck just went over? Okay, thank you. So which one was this, Councilwoman Riley, would you like to go back to?
21-281 with the bond ordinance.
Okay.
Chuck, just for clarification, for me, the original bond ordinance was for $8 million, correct?
I believe it was a little bit more than that, although I'm not 100% sure if that, I don't have the bond ordinance right here in front of me. I think at one time it was 800,000, and then we added 7.7 million to bring it up to 8.5. Is that right?
I do see 8.5, which is where my question at the top, it speaks of, in the title, it talks about amending the $8 million bond ordinance from Hawkins. And then we then discuss within the legislation that the city council expects the cost to be 10 million. We also allocated 2 million from city coffers, which would result in an $8 million gap or need. So I'm not sure if the original bond ordinance was 8.5, what are we amending?
The original bond ordinance was $800,000. Okay, that was back in July 22nd, 22 and 20. Then it went up to 8.5 in January of this year.
Correct.
We added 7.7 million. Then we added $2 million worth of fund balance. Okay.
Correct.
Out of that 2 million, I only increased the project cost by $1 million because the intention was to take $1 million of that and pay down the bond. Okay.
Okay.
And
so
now that puts us up to 0.5. Even though we've allocated 10.5 million in spending, I'm only saying we're only going to bond 9.5 at the max.
And then you said something about furniture, and we're not going to use this 9.5 million, but we're just requesting it in case we need to.
Correct. I know that at this point, there's $256,000 of furnishings that have to go inside that building that is being spent out of a different line than it is a bond ordinance. But because it's in discussing this with our bond attorneys, since it's part of the project, they wanted to increase the bond ordinance by that 256. And after something that is being covered here that you may or may not be aware of, we ran into some tanks underground this past week, which is going to cost us somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 to remove. And just to be on the safe side, I'm saying let's take it up to 10 million so we don't have to do this again.
Okay, so we're going up to 10 million, and this additional 1 million that was taken from the general fund is sitting where? Where, since we're not using it?
Sitting in cash. I haven't put it in the budget to spend.
Okay, but yeah, we're borrowing more, but not spending what we've already allocated.
Right. I'm making sure that that extra $1 million is not being spent. I've encumbered it in the system so it can't be spent. If you want to see what I did, I could show you in the system.
Okay. Thank you. And finally, I know the cost of labor and cost of building materials have increased, but with, again, the additional information you just shared, are there any other foreseeable changes that would increase the cost of building this fire station? Or are we pretty much, based upon the extra money that's been encumbered and stored, in addition to this additional now $1.5 million that we're increasing the bond amount by, is this enough? Or do we, I mean.
Let me answer that question for you. I personally have not been involved in much of this project. Okay, this has mostly been done by other people outside of me. I've gotten involved in it the last week, and before I came down here today, I called the engineering. I actually didn't say I called them. I met with the engineer directly, and I said, "Is this it?" And I won't say that he assured me, but he says he can't foresee anything else that's going to drive this cost up another. That's not covered in the contracts.
Okay, thank you. Does this change the estimated time of completion?
I'm going to answer that question, no, but there's another piece of legislation that I'm going to talk about that might. There's another add-on piece of legislation, not necessarily directly part of this project, but outside this project that could.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Burns, I think you're in your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Hey, Chuck, what kind of tanks were found?
I'm not 100% sure. Ken, do you know what kind of tanks they actually found?
All right, can you repeat that?
Do you know what kind of tanks they found underground last week? Were they oil tanks or were they gas tanks or?
I don't know. I thought they were gas tanks, but I don't want to
Same here.
say something that I'm not sure of.
I'm with you. It was some type of tank that was underground. To my knowledge, there was no environmental exposure to it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if there was environmental problems.
To my knowledge, I have not heard that.
Yeah, do you know if we're having that checked or anything?
I can ask the question.
Okay.
As part of removing it, they're going to have to check the surrounding area.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilwoman Riley, was that a hand?
Yes, that is. So now that they did bring that up, thank you, Councilman Burns. Will we be getting an update regarding the next steps and any environmental surveys that need to be done because of what was found? I know I wasn't sure if that was Ken or Chuck who said they can ask the question.
If there's any additional work, they're going to have to tell us and we will tell you.
Any more questions? Okay. So Chuck, let's move on to 285.
285 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to modify the intermunicipal water agreement we have with the town. This goes back to about 1957. Ken and I have been working on this since probably the August, September time period with the town of Vestal. Basically, the city's been billing the sewage treatment plant for water usage, which it used to supply, but at some point that stopped. What time period that is, we do not know, nor does the town of Vestal. Town of Vestal knows it goes back X number of years, for sure, but they don't know how far back it actually goes. So what this piece of legislation is doing is giving Vestal the right to build a sewage treatment plant for their water usage. There's a bunch of different things on here. We're gonna, as part of the agreement, we're gonna allow them to use 100,000 cubic feet of water a year for the next 5 years. That's to compensate them for the loss of revenue, I'll say, that they've lost over the years, that they can document. We bill them some money for usage in the past, which was legitimate per the contract. We're waiving that, which is like $5,060. What else is there? We get a tax free assessment of the building, which stays in place. Ken, is there anything else? Well, the last thing is the one area that we're not finalizing on, that they've elected not to put into the agreement, but I'm telling them that they need to, is that it's only a water account. They cannot build a sewage treatment plant for sewer, since none of the sewer goes into Vestal's pipes, nor will they ever be billed for it. So they wanted this to just to be a water agreement. I talked to their attorney today and said, we have to at least put this in, it's a water only account. But they're talking about this tonight. They're gonna vote on it next Wednesday, and they need the sewage treatment plant to vote on it. And then you guys vote on it the 22nd, and this would go into effect on January 1st.
Any questions or comments for Chuck? Thank you, Chuck.
Do we have any other ones here? 280s.
I think you're good. Next one up is 286.
286 is gonna be me.
Oh,
The mayor called me up to his office today and asked me to put together a piece of legislation to use $3 million worth of ARPA funds to go towards the town and country apartments. I don't know the details of all this. He said he will come down at the next work session and give everyone details on it. And if anyone has any questions between now and then, feel free to email him or call him and ask him questions. I know he doesn't have all the details on it yet, but he says he will have them all worked out before next month, or the next work session.
Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam President. So I just want to clarify the timeline of this. So if all of the details are going to be ironed out by next work session, it seems premature to me to have this as an RL at this work session.
Well,
No?
I think the situation, Councilman Aviva, is that this is probably something that's going to have to be approved for whatever reason before the end of the year. Okay, and whether it's a state deal or a contractor deal, I mean, I've heard different things that have been going on with this project for years. Okay, and I know that there was always going to have to be some input from city funds to do this. I don't know the specific details on this, but my gut feel is what he's saying is that he needs this to be voted on before the end of the year to secure whatever work's going to be done. And that's me saying that. I can't tell you that's factual because he didn't say that to me.
Okay. And this would be, if approved, this would be $3 million going to, not going to a private developer, but it would be like a city match type of situation.
That's what would be my gut feel, but as I said, I don't know the facts on the project. He didn't really he didn't go into any details. He said, could I just work them up an RL here for this $3 million?
Okay.
And he said to be specific, it's affordable housing at town and country.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And again, I guess, I'll reach out, but this I guess I'm wondering out loud if this has anything to do with a change in ownership of Town and Country, or if this would be the same owners. I mean, I guess we don't know.
I think those are questions that you should probably, this is just me being blunt, send him these questions so he can answer them next Monday.
Well, yes, I have been pestering to try and be kept in the know about Town and Country. So I will reiterate that desire. Thanks.
Yeah.
Burns, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Yeah, Chuck, I'm sure we'll get these answers. My concern would be, I know that there was a big project announced before COVID, which was more than 3 million. I remember it was more than 3 million. I forget the exact amount. Aviva might have that, but my concern is that we put $3 million into this private property, and then they sell it when the work is all done, and they walk away with our $3 million because we've increased their property value. But I'm sure the mayor will have those answers. Thanks.
And Councilman Burns, I think there's probably a lot to do with this thing. I mean, I have, like I said, I really don't know all the details on this, but the last one had like tax credits, which sort of makes it hard for people to walk away. I'm not saying that they can't, they can.
Right.
I'm sure there's some type of pilot agreement that will generate more money for the city than this, but I know none of the details. So
right, yeah, I'm
these
sure.
are the questions that you should ask him so he comes down prepared.
Right. I'm sure he's thought of all that, but okay, thanks.
Councilwoman Riley?
Yes, thank you, Council President. So since when do we accept legislation that's basically a blank statement that we then have to send emails to get details about when the legislation is being presented to us? Why should we have to guess what this is about if it's using such a large chunk of the ARPA money? If it was not prepared, it shouldn't have come on our docket.
I think.
Why should we send individual emails about legislation that is being sought, information that is they're requesting? And Chuck, you are complicit because you said you wrote it on his behalf. What is it? You're not telling us anything besides $3 million is needed.
What I'm doing is I'm putting the RL down here so that you guys are aware of it. If he comes down here and asks you next Monday to expedite it, okay, I'm sure everyone's going to say no.
Absolutely.
Okay. But if you're now somewhat aware of some of the questions that you may have, he can answer to you a week or 2 weeks from today if you send him those questions. If you don't want to send him the questions, that's your
No, it's
choice.
not about not sending the questions, Chuck. It's about being prepared and sending legislation that is comprehensive so that we can all together as one body then make an informed decision. What you've given us is a skeleton and said, create questions and email him.
What I said is he's going to come down and talk to you in 2 weeks and give you all the details after everything is finalized. Okay. At this point, he doesn't have everything finalized.
I'm not sure if that's a hand, Councilwoman Friedman, or you were just waving. Did you want to say something?
I want to echo Councilwoman Riley's sentiment, which is, I think, kind of what I was, what I initially brought up with my confusion about the timeline of this legislation. So yeah, it does seem premature to me as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilwoman Riley.
Oh, I see Councilman Strawn is off mute. I don't want to jump. Do you want to go, Councilman Strawn?
Oh, I didn't see a hand. Go ahead. I'm sorry if I didn't see it. Councilman Strawn, did you have something to say?
Well, I was just going to say, this is probably just to get on the calendar, but can we just have him give us, I don't know if based on this RL, if we know what questions to even ask.
Right.
But can you just have him send us all the information that he has rather than just, so this is the request, because this is an issue we've had. I don't think we should have to email. I think we're just have him send all the information he possibly can so we can look at it before 2 weeks. I think that's a simpler way to, because even
Ron,
I understand getting on the docket because we're approaching the end of the year, but we might as well just get the information rather than just having to go emails back and forth and stuff like that.
So Chuck, can you relay that question as that you would like some more information regarding this?
I can relay that information.
Thank you.
What he's trying to be is upfront here, and he doesn't have all the information. And let's just.
Well, I understand that, but there's no sense of sending an email about questions. We might as well just get the information once he has it directly to all of us. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying
sorry,
trying to get on the schedule.
This is
Basically, because we're
Sharon.
running out of time. I get that.
Yeah. Phil, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Sharon. So the clerk's office should direct a formal request on behalf of City Council to the mayor's office for all of the information relevant to this request for legislation. And I do want to not play devil's advocate, but acknowledge that the mayor's office this month, due to the change in open meetings law, has made more of an effort to get information or what they may be requesting to council, as well as the public, far in as advanced as possible due to the changes that Governor Hochul made. So I believe that that was the motivation for bringing it down now, as opposed to expediting it in 2 weeks. But nonetheless, I think council's points are valid. Lee, can you make a record of that request and execute it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Riley?
Thank you again. And Chuck, if possible, can you tell us where this 3 million is coming from in terms of how we had the Excel document with the money and pre-allocations and proposed allocations? So that ARPA Excel document we had some time ago?
Yes, after this 3 million would be approved, that would leave a total proposed uses of $32,537,799, leaving a balance of $13,846,875.
Okay, can we have an update of that Excel email to us though, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to RL 283. Chuck, are you talking about this one? Jeff is not here. I don't see him here.
Yeah.
Where is he?
I don't think he is.
Okay. So
This is another one where Governor Hochul's 24 hours puts us in a bind. Water department was out for 12 hours with 6 to 8 people on Saturday night fixing a water leak that puts them over budget. So we're asking to move $10,000 from the water filtration plant's overtime budget to their water distribution budget. And hopefully we don't have another break like that to spend another ton of money.
okay. Any questions? Thank you, Chuck. Okay, so we are moving on to 287.
287 is the other one.
Yeah, is that you again, Chuck? Ron is not here, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's 287. Yes, go ahead. Resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with New York State Department of Transportation in the installation of the water line in New York State ROW.
This is, I'm going to call it an easement. Maybe Ken can better term it, but we need to get an agreement with New York State Department of Transportation for the installment of a water line over to hook into the fire station. I believe it's on Chapman Street. It actually says it's on the side of Chapman Street between Pine and Court Street.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you again, Chuck.
Is that it for me?
I think that is it for you. I think the only one left is RL 21278.
Wait,
Right.
Sophia, Ken, before you go, there's a bond ordinance also that has not come down yet. I gave the paper down to Lee, I think on Thursday, but I have not got the bond ordinance yet from our bond attorneys. This is for an additional $85,000 for the State Street project out front. I'll let Ron, when he's here, talk about it, but that one also will be coming your way. We probably should set a public hearing up for that one, Lee, as well as the fire station.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck, yes, we can set those on Wednesday.
Thank you. So let's move on to, I believe, the last one, which is 278, right?
Councilmember Riley, you were muted.
Oh, no.
Do you have something?
No, no, no.
No? Okay. All right, Ken, I think you are up.
Yeah, 278, we've been doing this all year. We've had a lot of outside counsel this year, much more than anticipated. We're trying to wrap up the end of the year, so we're, increasing the funding for that.
Okay. Any comments or questions for Ken? All right, thank you.
All right, good night.
Have a good night. Okay, so it looks like the final item here is we have a discussion regarding our council calendar for 2022. And there was a draft that was circulated to us all. I believe we all have a copy and hopefully we had an opportunity to take a look at it. Just a quick correction. January 4th, that Tuesday that's highlighted in green as a work session, that actually would be that Monday, the 3rd. We don't have off, correctly? Am I?
That's correct. That was a
Okay.
typo. We thought that
So it-
City Hall was closed on the 3rd, but it's open.
Right, so then it would be the 3rd and the 5th that week, not the 4th. So I don't know if anybody had any comments, any suggestions. I mean, I'd like to have a conversation regarding any holidays or anything that we need to change to accommodate folks. So I think Councilwoman Friedman, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. The October 5th business meeting falls on Yom Kippur, which is an important Jewish holiday. So if we could change that, that would be great.
I mean, I'm fine with
This
that.
is Sharon. We have to change that. We can't have
Yes.
a business meeting following the high holiday.
Yes.
Would that Thursday, the 6th work for a business meeting?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
It would be.
Okay. We'll change that to the 6th at 6 p.m.
Anything else that we
Thank
need
you.
to highlight that we missed? Okay. All right. then.
Oh, this is Councilwoman
Yes, Councilman
Riley.
Ryder, go ahead.
I know, and I'm asking Lee and Janine to kind of speak to this, but when we have our meetings back to back, after the legislation has been sent on the Friday and there's a holiday on Monday, it seems as if we get a lot of rushed documents on that Tuesday, the day of the work session, then we turn around and have a business meeting. I know that would affect a lot of the dates here on this calendar, but if we could just consider that moving forward, either holding people to the Friday mail out and then it waits till the next week, or do something to reduce the number of last minute RLs that come in on Tuesday, the day of the meeting, that would be great, especially when we have the work session. Although most of them are not expedited, it still is a lot in terms of reading through the legislation and being able to prepare adequately for the meeting, both meetings that are back to back.
Talked about September and July, I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, right, Lee?
January, September.
Well, January, we just. it
Oh, yeah,
would be
January.
Monday and Wednesday.
Not the
June as
17th,
well.
18th, and 19th. Remember that.
Oh, yes, you're looking at the other week. Okay, yeah.
And
Correct.
June as well. There's back to back.
Yes, it looks like there's 5 weeks here where we have Tuesday work sessions. And it is a bit of a strain on the clerk's office, but City Hall is typically good about limiting what they expedite during those weeks. And we work through whatever you guys need us to do. We'll be able to do it.
Thanks. I see Councilman Friedman, you have your hand up. And did you have a hand up, Councilman Burns? I'm sorry if I skipped you.
No.
No, okay. Thanks. Councilwoman.
Thumbs
Friedman.
up.
It was a thumbs up, okay. All right,
Um,
Councilman Friedman, you go ahead, it's all yours.
Yes, okay, thank you. This is not an idea that I'm married to, but I'm just offering this for consideration. What if we had a schedule like instead of having Monday, Wednesday meetings, something like every other Wednesday, so there's like, for example, the first Wednesday of the month is a work session, the second is a business meeting, the third is a work session, the fourth is a business meeting. That would, I think in some ways it might slow things down, but in other ways it might speed things up and make it less strenuous, especially when things are expedited. I don't know. I'm just offering that as a consideration. What are people's thoughts about a schedule that maybe looks like that instead of having meetings that are at regular two days apart?
I don't know what folks are thinking regarding this, and I'm open to listening to everyone's thoughts. My thinking, I guess, regarding this next year, 2022, being that, we have a new mayor coming in and potentially some changes in departments, and just the way folks are used to working, that we stick to this as much as possible. I think changes can always occur later on. But I mean, that's just my thinking. I'm certainly open to listening to what everybody else might have on their minds regarding this. Bill, did you have somebody? Oh.
This is
I
Sharon.
thought I saw Phil's little box light up, but maybe not.
Go ahead, Phil.
I was just gonna add, I mean, I know the days move around. I just wonder if there was any thought. It was nice this year having not on the Thanksgiving week. Is there any thought of using the Monday, the 31st, and going, and then having the week of Thanksgiving not have a meeting, have the 31st and the 2nd, and the 14th and the 16th? Because that's in essence what it was this year. Just happened to be, slid back into it was just a thought. It was nice having the night before, the day before Thanksgiving, not having a work session. And then you have the 2 weeks at the end of November instead of at the end of October. But that's just a thought.
Anyone else have any comments? Councilman Friedman?
Thanks. Councilman Strawn, I agree with, I would be amenable to moving that around so there's not a meeting right before Thanksgiving. However, I just wonder, I don't know if we should move that later, because then there would be a month in between the second meetings in October, because it happens to work out where there's 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks. And so if we move it later, there's going to be a month, but maybe we could move it earlier so that it would be, or is that what you said? I'm sorry if that's what you said.
I was just saying that the 30, you're just going the 31st and November 2nd. And then
if we were to move those meetings, I think that would be better rather than moving them a week later, because then I think it would be too long between October.
No, I wouldn't do a week later. It's almost earlier. And then you have instead of 2 weeks of October, because we have a couple times where we have 2 weeks, you have 2 weeks at the end of November. You have Thanksgiving weekend, just like we did this year. It's more like it was this year. Just happens to be that a Monday is the last day of October.
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't want, if we move it later to the 14th and 16th, this meetings that are November 7th and November 9th, if we move those to November 14th and 16th, then there's going to be 4 weeks in between. So
No, they would go back. They would go back to the 31st and the 2nd.
Go back. Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
This is
Yes, I
Sharon.
think that's doable.
Just friendly reminder that ideally we will be in person starting in 2022. And the calendar schedule for meetings, the sooner you set it, the better, because the remainder of our boards, we schedule around city council meetings so that you are not conflicting in that workspace. The city council has first preference. But for example, tonight there was a zoning board of appeals meeting. It's just occurring remotely in a different location. So the sooner you guys vote on the schedule that you want, the sooner we can set the schedules for the rest of the year. And I encourage you to have ongoing conversations about the schedule that you seek for 2022 as soon as possible.
And just to follow up with that, remember, it also requires security because you're back in the buildings. So a lot of times we try to make sure that security is overlapping so that we're not paying for different nights. So it is a coordination with all the other boards as well.
Is there a specific date right now that's set based on the governor that we are going to go back? Or is that still up in the air?
It was mid-January, I think, or the first beginning of January, Sharon, do you recall?
It was.
Yeah, the 15th.
Mid-January.
And just remember that the remote meetings is not a requirement. It is at the option of municipalities, and it comes with various requirements for virtual meetings. So as soon as this council has the capacity to be in person with regards to the space, it may elect to do so, regardless of the executive order that is in place through the middle of January.
Yes, so back to Councilman Strawn's point. So if you wanted to move the month of November's meetings up 1 week, so we would do October 31st would be the first work session. And then the first business meeting in November would be November 2nd. And then you would want to move that other set of weeks up. So you would have another work session on the 14th and another business meeting on the 16th of November. Is that what you were going for, Councilman Strawn?
I was just asking if anybody, I mean, it seemed to work out well this year. It would in essence be the same. It just, like I said, just happens to be the Mondays is in October, but it really doesn't matter. It's in every other week till then. And then the 2 weeks would be at the end of November during Thanksgiving and the week after, just like it was, just like this time. We've had 2 weeks before this meeting. So it'd be in essence the same as it is this year. Just
okay.
Just a thought.
We can make that change if you'd like.
Well, I
like
don't know
it.
if anybody else likes that idea or not, but
I like having Thanksgiving week off.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I like it as well.
I'm fine with it as well. So we'll make that change.
Now, I did want to ask, this is Councilwoman Riley.
Yep.
We don't want to have a meeting on the week of Mother's Day, but the week of Mother's Day. Is there a reason why we moved the meeting up to the first week of May? Is that why, first and third? Because that's the first full week, is that why?
Yes, so typically it would start the first Monday of the month would be the first work session of the month.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
I think I would propose that we make those changes to for that week of November that we just talked about, and move again that Tuesday, January 4th to that Monday, the 3rd, and go from there. What are folks thinking about it?
and then you're sliding October 5th to October 6th, correct, for that business meeting?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Sounds good.
We're comfortable with that?
Okay. Would you like me to add this?
Or,
I mean, we can consult Ken on this. I'm fine with voting on it now, or we could add it to the agenda for Wednesday.
Ken?
If the calendar's okay, you can add it to the agenda for Wednesday and approve it, and that way it goes to the media. You want to give them the full year so that you're not doing it on a per meeting basis.
Okay, great, thank you.
And if we have to make changes, we can.
Okay, so we'll add that for this Wednesday.
Looks like we're on to pending legislation then, and thank you everyone for that discussion. Clerk?
So we have a lot of items here for Wednesday. We do have 2 public hearings that we're setting. And actually, correction, we have 3 public hearings that we're setting. We have 2 bonds. The RL that Megan presented tonight, that requires a public hearing. So we'll set that on Wednesday as well. And then the annual action plan, that public hearing is still open. So we'll accept comments Wednesday evening, and then we can vote to close that as well. And then if anyone has questions on any of our pending legislation tonight, let us know. And RL 21260, the sale of 72 Court Street, that'll require a seeker.
Thank you, Lee. Okay. Unless there's anything else, any other comments? I will take a motion to adjourn our meeting for the night.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.